This was supposed to be a real revolution. The V-engine Aprilias were so ahead of their time, they were destined to dominate motorsport and change its face forever.
And yet, they were never allowed to. Today we're looking at the story of the Aprilia XV series. How they took over the world, yet how external forces stomped on their brakes.
A lot of really important events happened back in 2006. The Enron trial, Pluto being disconsidered as a planet, Twitter finally seeing the light of day, and Andrea Bocelli winning Italy's best-selling artist award.
A lot of really important firsts happened that year, and music wasn't Italy's only ace up its sleeve. A small manufacturer called Aprilia announced a dirt bike and supermoto lineup that was going to change the world.
And heaven and nature sing, and heaven and nature sing, and heaven and nature sing.
It was the first V-twin production motocross bike. This was also Aprilia's first big bore dirt bike. The first proper supermoto to have over 70 horsepower at the back wheel, probably the first bike to feature no frame bars underneath. The engine was a stress member and constituted part of the frame.
Its design was futuristic, it looked fast, and it went even faster. It won several Supermoto championships, dominating the American ones. It was an absolute weapon.
We have a great package this year, and I'd really like to thank Aprilia Motorcycles USA for getting involved and making a great program for us this season.
Maybe that was the problem. Bring in the American Motorcyclist Association, or AMA for short. Among other things, they regulate sports like supercross or motocross across the pond.
In 2006, the same year when Aprilia launched these bikes, the AMA came out with some rule corrections.
First one had to do with noise.
It makes sense. Aftermarket pipes made bikes loud to the point of hearing damage to humans.
So yes, having a limit made sense. The second rule enforced rear-wheel drive is the only drivetrain option.
Again, kind of makes sense. Experiments with all-wheel drive bikes were starting to show up.
But this sort of regulation was popular in other racing series too. By design, motorcycles were rear-wheel drive, and to keep the spirit alive, they enforced it. Which again, sounds reasonable to me. And then came the third amendment. This one limited the number of cylinders for a competing motocross bike to, well, to one.
The funny thing is, so far there were no two-cylinder MX bikes. Not yet at least, but they still banned them.
Their reasoning was to try keep the cost low for racing, so that multiple manufacturers and racers could compete. Yeah, keep costs low in motocross. I think we can all see the irony in that nowadays, can we? Or maybe they didn't want Aprilia to join in. Maybe not the AMA itself, but the other manufacturers who were knee-deep into the single-cylinder frenzy. I mean, lobbying isn't a thing, right? Especially not in America.
Look, was it a targeted attack towards Aprilia? I can't say for sure. What I can say is that the Italians were the only manufacturers who invested proper R&D time and money into a twin dirt bike.
So, if this wasn't a way to make sure Aprilia didn't come in and dominate, what was it? The excuse of keeping costs low? I mean, I'll leave that up to you to decide. Just like you can decide if you want to subscribe to this channel. Thanks.
So when I'm riding on the asphalt, we get up to, 100, 115 mile an hour. So the speeds at some venues can be really, hair-raising for me.
I was thinking, this wasn't the end. I mean, race-derived bikes being banned from racing isn't a new concept, and they can work for the public. Sure, you can't win championships, but sometimes you can win the market. This was a blow to Aprilia's radical concept, but it wasn't one to sink the ship. In fact, the blame lies solely on the captain. This is a conventional supermoto. In fact, it's my supermoto, a Kawasaki 450.
You can replace the brand name with whatever you want, Honda, Yamaha, KTM, name any, it doesn't really matter.
All these bikes have some things in common with each other, yet none with the Aprilia.
First and most obvious, the engine. All supermotos are singles, and that's because it makes sense.
It makes the engine simpler, easier to produce and work on. The Aprilia? That was a twin.
Look at my swing arm. On most bikes, it's one plain looking beam, yet Aprilia wasn't part of most bikes.
We also have the exhaust, which is conventional on most supermotos. Yet again, not on the Aprilia.
So why did this not work?
You see, it's cool to make things in order to be different, but, and that's a big but, there's usually a reason why most manufacturers do things a certain way.
Aprilia made an incredibly powerful bike, one that was sexier than anything else on the market, but all that came at a cost, and I'm not just talking about pricing.
Here's the thing, unlike most dirt bikes and supermotos, this was not a simple machine. All that sexiness came at the cost of complexity, and that's what started hammering the nails in their coffin. First came the acquisition price, which was, well, it was high, and parts were no less expensive. But let's say you could afford that. Issue number 2 were the service intervals. Here I have Aprilia's official list of service operations. This right here says to do an oil change every 15 hours.
It also says to check the bolts holding the engine and the braking system at the same interval. Even worse, you had to replace the pistons and rings every 90 hours.
Before you jump to my throat, I hear you. These figures must be in case of race use, right? That's how most manufacturers do this. Worst case scenario, if racing, these are the service intervals. Except you'd be wrong. These are the intervals for street and hobby use. The racing intervals are way crazier than this. In fact, they're halved.
And not just racing, Aprilia told its customers to halve the service intervals even if riding in rainy conditions.
Yet, final nail in the coffin, even if you did all of this on time, maybe even more often, you'd still be left with one of the most unreliable bikes ever made.
The starter, the many recalls, the crankcase seals, bolts backing out, these are just a small few issues you can find online. If you even need to ask about the reliability of this bike, it's not the bike for you.
If you're gonna buy one of those, you probably already know what you're looking for. If you don't know what you're looking at, you probably should not buy one. This is a race bike. You know, this isn't your 5,000 kilometer oil change Harley Davidson here.
Engines grenading themselves are more common than lobbyists in America. Combining that with a general lack of expertise made the XV series a complete failure.
Except that's not 100% correct. For Aprilia, the XV series was a complete failure. Indeed, they lost a ton of money while gaining a lot of bad rap for it. No matter how you put it, this was a mistake.
But for us riders, it was a fortunate mistake. For the few of us who ever get to own such a machine, this will forever take a special place in any garage. There's nothing like it, and there might never be something like it ever again.
It was special, truly remarkable. It was a mistake for the manufacturer, sure, but a mistake that created something unique. And bikes like these are the ones that will be cemented in the history books.
In 100 years, nobody will care about an F750 GS, but everyone will look in awe at a bike like the XV. Thanks a lot for watching. If you're interested in another tragic motorcycle death, check out our latest video on who killed the Yamaha R6. Leave a like if you liked it, a sub would be appreciated. Until next time, have a good one.